Howdy, howdy, friends. Happy Monday. Welcome to another Monday Masterclass with your girl, Natalie, the Keto Bikini Pro. Coach Nat. I always say Coach Nat. Why did I call myself my full name tonight? What is that about? What is up, ladies? The live has begun, so drop a comment. Let me know if you are here with me live tonight. Look at me matching my water bottle. How about that? Good times. Side note, I've been living in these off the shoulder. Shout out to the 80s. Bringing the 80s back. Shout out to my 80s babies, my late 70s babies. You know, if you know, you know. I just got, these are like the most comfortable things. I just ordered a bunch of these things off of like Amazon and TikTok shop in a bunch of different colors. I'll be living in them on the low carb cruise. Shout out to anyone going with us to Alaska, to the low carb cruise. We are leaving in 2 days. Drop a comment here if you are going to be on the cruise with us. Let me know. What is up, Becky, Michelle, of course, Bubbles, Miss Karen. Jennifer is on tonight. Hello, Jennifer. Awesome. All right, ladies. Well, tonight, Becky said Flashdance vibe, 1983, baby. Flashdance came out the year I was born, y'all. I went to see it on my 30th birthday to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Flashdance. So, okay, let's see. That being said, let's talk about tonight's topic. Tonight we are talking about mistakes. Mistakes you are making on keto that are keeping you from the results that you want. This is what I specialize in, ladies. This is what we do inside the Keto Bikini Academy. We help you correct all the things you've been doing wrong, whether it is, I shouldn't even mention it. I'm going to go through like 14 different things tonight. I just made a brain dump list of the things I see the most frequently. And I'm sure there will be more than this. So feel free, if anything pops into your mind as we're chatting about mistakes you've made and have been corrected throughout your journey. But I'm going to dive into the things I see most often with members coming into the academy, private clients starting with me, when I start taking a look at what they've been up to, what they've been doing, what they're not doing. And it's usually pretty simple for the most part for me to essentially diagnose the keto things that need to be corrected, whether it be nutrition or movement, training, fitness related, or mindset or lifestyle or habit type things. So usually I see some low hanging fruit. So we're going to start with those and then we're going to work our way down to all the mistakes that I commonly see. Some of this will be a bit of a, not a full repeat, but a bit familiar from last week's topic, which was about getting started on keto or carnivore. And that was, I talked more about my process, what I would do step by step in terms of making a plan, getting started on keto or carnivore. So it was a lot of like what to think about, what to plan for. And I realized at the end of that masterclass, while we touched on a few of these things we're going to talk about here, it was focused more on the thought process and the getting organized and getting prepared kind of thing. But it was not as much about the practical things, right? The foods, the macros, I did touch on some of that, but I really wanted to, it brought up a lot of mistakes. A lot of ladies actually shared some of the mistakes they've made from the question I asked in the Facebook group last week about getting started and what would you do differently. But then it got me thinking about more and more things I didn't share on that masterclass. So I wanted to dive a little bit deeper. So Karen just asked, off topic, what's up with my upper body struggle? Was hitting PRs for 4 weeks. The past 2 weeks, I've had to drop my weights. Interesting. And you're not seeing the same thing with your lower body? So on your lower body workouts, are you still able to hit PRs? And it's just with your upper body? Tell me a little bit more. I know you've posted in the Facebook group. I don't think I've seen all the detail there. But let me know a little bit more about that. And I'm pretty sure you're not cycling anymore, right? You don't get a bleed once a month? Because usually for my cycling ladies, our strength waxes and wanes throughout the month, and we are not going to hit PRs every single week. Okay, nope, lower body is good. So you're still hitting PRs, able to kind of push for that progressive overload on your lower body, but your upper body is struggling. In general, I was going to say in general, we don't hit PRs all the time. You know, we're not going to be able to expect to hit progressive overload every single week, every single workout. At some point, we're going to need a deload. So it may just be that those particular muscles are in a place where they need a bit of a deload. So 2 master classes that you probably saw originally, but these will be good refreshers for you. And for anyone else curious about this kind of, what's going on with my progress in terms of my performance in my training, 2 master classes. One, intuitive training. So I love to talk about training intuitively, and there are some times we're going to be able to push for those PRs, and there are other times where we just don't have it and we're going to need to chill out a little bit. It has to do with so much more than gaining actual muscle strength, in particular muscle groups. There's so much more, because the CNS is what's really driving our central nervous system, is driving our training, it's driving our muscles to do the things that they do. And so we could be having an off day, and it could just happen to be that you're having an off day when you're doing upper body training. Another question to kind of parse that out, are you doing full body workouts, or are you doing upper body days and lower body days? Because if you're doing separately upper body days and lower body days, it could just be that you're having an off day on that particular upper body day. And if had it been a lower body day, you might have also not seen PRs on the lower body if it had just particularly been maybe bad sleep or stress or poor recovery or something else impacting your training outside of that. No more cycles. So it's unlikely to be hormonally driven, especially if it's only happening with upper and not with lower. Total body. Okay, total body workout. So if you're doing a full body workout, another thing I would look at, and you're still getting PRs on your floor push-ups. Okay, so it's probably specific exercises then that you're talking about upper body struggle, right? Because push-ups are like bench press, right? So you're working chest, shoulders, and triceps. And then, of course, full body too, because you're hitting core, that kind of thing. So if you're still able to get PRs on your floor push-ups, that's saying a lot. Another thing I'd look at with total body training is the order of the exercises. So which exercises are you doing first? Which exercises are you doing later? Because the muscle groups that are training later in the workout, you're already getting a little bit of systemic fatigue from the exercises you're doing earlier. So you may want to look at swapping around your exercise order, particularly for the muscle groups or the exercises where you are now seeing essentially no progress, right? No particular strength progress. So she says Arnold's overhead triceps, so overhead tricep extensions and rows. So we're talking shoulders, triceps, and back. So alternate upper and lower body exercises. So I'd look at where are your Arnold's, your overhead tricep extensions, and your rows happening in the workout order. Try doing on your next full body day, try doing those exercises first. And try the Arnold's first before you do any other exercise and see how you feel with them. Try your triceps, overhead tricep extensions first. Try your rows first and see if you notice a difference. The other thing you may not be noticing, and I don't know if you track your rest times closely, but it could be that you're inadvertently taking less rest time in between sets. So there's a lot of little nuances about what might be happening there. That's kind of a cool topic. We might need, it's been a while. I've been wanting to do another training related topic, but I haven't been sure about what specific topic I want to touch on with training. So maybe we'll do one all about training progression. Ooh, like how to assess your training progression. All right, writing that down right now so I don't forget it. Masterclass on training progression and assessing it. Yeah, there's so many variables with our training where there could be something where that particular muscle group could be a little exhausted that day, particularly. Could have to do with daily activity. But a lot of the time, it might be something as simple as not getting enough rest time between sets. The exercise that you do right before that exercise that may have pre-exhausted that muscle group or that area. Or systemically fatigue the body a little bit. So take a look at that, play around with order. This is the first experience of having to lower weights. Okay, so another thing that might be going on there, and yeah, this is definitely going to be a topic. For my newbies, right? So Karen's still in that camp. In your first year or two of consistent training, you get a lot of progression pretty consistently and frequently. And then as you become a, quote, trained individual, meaning you're now moving out of that newbie range, after 6 months to a year of consistent training, the gains in terms of strength gains and performance gains don't come as easily as they once did, because a lot of the gains we make in performance and strength in the gym in our first 6 months to a year are central nervous system adaptations. And then we finally get to actual muscle adaptation, and that is more difficult. So that's an interesting thing to look at. But we can talk about it. I'll dive deeper into that topic on another masterclass, but good question. All right. So, hello, Kim. Glad to have you here. Howdy. All right, so let's get into keto mistakes. So this very first one, I already know some of you here on the live have experienced this, and I know a lot of you watching the replay will have experienced this as well. This is a common thing I see, probably the number one most common thing that I see with problems on keto that are keeping you from getting the progress that you want or the results that you want, particularly with fat loss. This first one is particular to fat loss. Now, almost really all of these are in the context of how we talk about the goals that you all have around body composition, meaning gaining muscle and losing body fat, which is the two things every single woman wants, even if she says she's afraid to get bulky. She wants to tone up. That means she wants to put on muscle and get rid of body fat. And that means look more lean, fit, toned, shapely, in a good way. So when I say not getting results or not getting the progress that you want, it's usually as it relates to fat loss and or muscle gain, body recomposition. So number one, you could probably all guess what I'm going to say for number one. Eating too much fat. Most people who are seeking fat loss, those in a fat loss phase, and almost 100% of the women who come to me want to lose body fat. Even if they also want to gain muscle, they usually also want to lose body fat. There's a very, very small percentage of my clients and members who do come in understanding that they're underweight, they're under muscled, and they need to focus on gains, purely on gains. But 99.9% of my clients want either both or fat loss, right? So grand majority come in from the keto carnivore community, being told to eat sticks of butter, being told, oh, you're not making progress, eat more fat. You're not eating enough fat. And everybody is telling them this without asking them a single question about what they're already eating, about what their macros are, about whether they're tracking or not, or about anything else. You will see it all the time in every keto group, carnivore group that I'm in. People will ask, hey, I'm not getting fat loss. Now, they always call it weight loss. That's going to be another mistake people make, is focusing on weight, only on weight. But we'll get to that later. But hey, I'm no longer losing. What am I doing wrong? And they don't give any details at all about their background, about what they're already doing, about how much they weigh, about their body composition, about anything about themselves. And they will get 100 responses, and everybody tells them, eat more fat, without knowing a single thing. It boggles my mind. And many of these groups are the blind leading the blind. I should say one of the most common mistakes that I didn't put on this list is listening to what people have to say in a discussion group. It's just other people who are struggling just as much as you are. They are not an authority. They do not have any credentials to tell you anything about what you should or shouldn't be doing. So I should just preface it with that. That should be like the first most common mistake, is just listening to the peanut gallery, listening, misery loves company, listening to all the other people who are also not getting the results that you want and that they want, and listening to what they have to say about your body and your journey, with them knowing nothing about you and them not being professionals in any way, shape, or form. So let's just put that out there first. Some other random person online who happens to also be in a group that you're in, telling you what to do with your nutrition, ask them how they're qualified to give you that advice, rather than asking anybody and everybody for advice and then listening to everybody's advice. That will have you spinning your wheels. So I digress. I could go on and on about that one, but that's it. It's the too much fat everywhere, and it's from people who do not know what they're talking about. I don't care if they have 100,000 followers and they've personally been doing this diet. They're not the authority. They're not anybody's authority. They just have a lot of people looking at them online. Doesn't mean they should be telling you what to do. So eating too much fat. It kind of goes without saying. I don't really have to get into the details here, but if you're eating sticks of butter, if you are adding fat to fatty meats, you're already eating nothing but fatty meats, bacon and eggs and ribeyes and short ribs and oxtails and the fattiest everything you can find, and then also adding more fat to it to reach some magical number of fat macros or fat ratio that is magically just going to now melt all the fat off your body. That's not how this works. And usually that advice is being given because there is a focus on ketosis, and that ketosis, getting into nutritional ketosis, and you have to eat all this fat to get into nutritional ketosis, and that's the only way you can lose fat. So I put these two together, but really I could split this off, and this would be the second mistake, and that is chasing ketones or chasing ketosis, thinking that fat loss happens because of ketosis. Let me tell you, I've got news for you. You can be in ketosis and not lose body fat. You cannot be in ketosis and you can lose body fat. Being in ketosis is not the thing that drives your results. It does not magically make fat loss happen. You can still be eating too much food particularly too much fuel, more energy than what your body needs. And then your body has no choice but to store the extra excess energy in your fat cells for later. And fat can very easily be stored in fat cells. So I don't care what famous internet doctor is telling you that if you eat too much fat, you'll just poop it out. That's not true. Yes, it may help you go to the bathroom. You may absolutely poop it out. But that doesn't mean that your body's not storing the excess if you're eating too much, just because you're going to the bathroom. So if you think, oh, as long as I'm going to the bathroom, that means I can never possibly eat too much fat and I can just eat all I want. Not true. Not true. And I can prove it to you. I can show you my numbers because I track everything. I can show you that when I am not losing body fat, it is because I'm eating too much fat. And once I pull back on that fat, boom, all of a sudden, magically, I start losing body fat again. How is that possible? If you can eat all the fat in the world and never gain any fat, it's just not true. Okay. Yes, and along the same lines of that, Becky shares, eating until comfortably stuffed didn't work so well for me. Yes, and it's the same kind of advice. It's, oh, there's no possible way you can overeat on this diet. If you're doing carnivore and you're only eating meat and eggs, you can't possibly overeat. Absolutely. The ladies in this community can tell you they've been there, done that, got the t-shirt, could win a eating contest. Put me in, coach. I could probably win an eating contest. Absolutely. And Hannah agrees. The whole eat more fat definitely made me gain weight fat. 100%. So let's put in here eating too much fat. I'm also just going to say eating too much in general. Yeah, eating too much food, eating too much fat. Absolutely. And then chasing ketones and making it all about whether or not you're in ketosis. That's the other side of that coin and that's why they're telling you to eat more fat because, oh, you must not be in ketosis. You need to drive the ketones up. Having higher ketones is not going to help you lose any more body fat than having lower ketones. If you know your body can produce ketones, that's all that matters. So you don't need to chase ketones and test ketones forever and try to get higher and higher levels of ketones, not for fat loss. Maybe if you have a brain condition and you want to take a therapeutic approach, but that is not the approach for body composition. If you want to hear more about the ketone discussion, Coach Bronson and I just talked about it on our coffee chat, which has been rebranded, by the way, Keto Rehab, because a lot of what I do in the academy is also what Coach Bronson and I have both been doing in our coaching practices for years, and that is rehabilitating all of the things that are being taught out there that are incorrect. So coffee chat is now Keto Rehab. Bronson's actually on a call right now with a potential new sponsor I'm very excited about. We're going to make it happen. So more news about that very soon. Very exciting. But you have a lot more to look forward to there. This was on our today's the 9th, June 8th, monthly Q&A. So it's the first one where you'll see it branded Keto Rehab. You can check that out on Coach Bronson's YouTube, which is just Coach Bronson on YouTube. I also have a playlist on my channel. You can check out the playlist, Coffee Chats. I save all of our videos there to that playlist as well. Kim says your last coffee chat was very enlightening. Oddly enough, and the universe works in mysterious ways, Kim just had a question about ketones. And I was like, oh, how about that? The stars aligned. We just talked about it. Amen. Hannah, I've had to really cull who I listen to and follow just those who preach the facts as following what I want to be true, eat as much as you want, as long as it's carnivore, just doesn't work for me. And that's ultimately, right? This is what we're talking about, y'all. This is like the grand majority. I always talk about this, that, we have to think about considering the source of who are we getting this information from? Where are they coming from? Where are they at? Are they where we want to go? Where did they come from? Did they come from something that we came from? Do they understand where we're coming from? Is their advice appropriate for us? And a lot of these channels, especially these really large channels, they're speaking to the masses. So they have to give very, very general advice that will, work for the grand majority of people. And one thing I always caution, especially with those who are clearly speaking to beginners and clearly speaking to those who are coming from standard American diet and coming from morbidly obese, you can practically do anything at that stage. Just removing the carbs alone is going to make a massive difference. But when you are a person who is even remotely in the realm of a normal, healthy body composition, which doesn't necessarily mean it is your ideal body composition, because the healthy norms out there in the world are higher body fat than what we really are wanting to be at optimally. So it may not be your ideal or your optimal body composition, but if you are in a healthier, normal range and you're wanting to make changes in your body still, and you don't have 200 or 300 pounds to lose, they're not talking to you. And that advice is no longer going to work for you. So it may work for a short period of time until it doesn't. And that's usually when ladies eventually find me. What can I do now? It's no longer working. Well, of course it's no longer working, and this is why. That's what I was going to say, Hannah. Yes, this is where I was trying to go with that. Their advice is attractive, and that is why, possibly why, they have such a large following. Exactly. People love to hear, hey, guess what? You can lose a bunch of weight and eat all the things you love. You can lose a bunch of weight and eat everything you want. That's why the sugar diet has become so popular. And unfortunately, the people who are promoting it are getting tons and tons of views, which is only going to make them talk about it more. But it's because it's attractive to people. What? You mean I can now eat all the sugar I want and just lose a bunch of weight? Grr. Yes, exactly, Mary. They want people to feel like it's magic and will melt. Just because it's simple does not mean it's effing easy. That's right. Indeed. Okay, let's get into the next thing. And that is something Mary said up here. Let me find her comment. Boop, boop, boop. Here it is. I typically undereat and do not lose fat when I do. So the next one is not eating enough. So we just talked about eating too much fat, eating too much in general. But the other side of the coin that I see with a lot of people is that they have been undereating for a very, very long time. And this one I'm going to go and put together with it the other thing I'm always railing against, which is fasting. Not eating enough, not eating enough food in general, not eating, like, period, trying to do all these extended fasts. I've got ladies coming to me, they're doing extended multiple day fasting or alternate day fasting, 24 hours not eating, one meal, and then another 24 hours not eating, and then one meal. So we're talking like they're getting 500 calories a day, dismal amounts of protein and fat. So the big thing, though, here with the not eating enough is not eating enough protein. So really, this could be two different things. We can talk about, in general, not eating enough and fasting too much, and then also not eating enough protein, because everybody in the keto space is telling you you have to fear protein because protein's going to turn into chocolate cake and then get stored as, it turns into glucose and then gets stored in your fat. Oh, but eat all the fat you want. Did you all know that fat actually goes to the fat cells more easily and more readily than glucose does? You're certainly not told that in the keto space. It's actually easier to store fat, dietary fat as body fat, than it is to store glucose as body fat, because glucose has to be converted to triglycerides and then stored in the cells. Ingested dietary fat is already in the form that it needs to be when it goes into the cells. Fatty acids are already fatty acids. So there's a little something you can share next time somebody tells you can eat all the fat in the world. As long as you're not eating carbs, it doesn't matter. Not exactly. So, and protein does not turn into glucose just because you're eating protein. The most amazing thing about our human bodies, one of the most amazing things, is that it has these mechanisms to protect us and to keep us alive. And one of those mechanisms is called gluconeogenesis. It's where we can take any substrate, mind you, not just protein, any substrate, and turn it into glucose. Gluconeo means new glucose. Genesis means creation. It's the creation of new glucose. That's what gluconeogenesis means. It does not say protein anywhere in that. It is simply the creation of new glucose in the body. And protein's not the only thing it can use to do that. It can use fat. So it happens by need. If the body is in need of glucose for something, different processes in the body require glucose. That does not mean we have to eat it. It can then utilize gluconeogenesis to get that glucose, but it is not going to come from your muscles. It's not going to break down your muscles and use the protein in your muscles. And it's not going to just use the protein that you're eating because you're eating too much protein. It's going to use the amino acids when it needs to, or other substrates. And that is happening in the background, off and on, whenever the body needs it. It is not because, oh, now I have all this extra protein, so I have to turn it into glucose. That's not how that works. So you do not have to fear protein. In fact, if you are trying to maintain your muscle mass, it is important to eat enough protein, adequate protein to maintain and build muscle mass. And that's not just skeletal muscle, all of the muscles of the body. Amino acids are the building blocks of all of the tissues of the body. So our organs, all the tissues, it goes far beyond just muscles or just the skeletal muscle when we're thinking about muscles, okay? So eating enough protein. Most women on keto are not eating nearly enough protein because, and we're going to get to this one in a bit, but they're using ratios to determine their calories, or excuse me, to determine their macros. And all of the keto calculators out there are saying, oh, eat 80-20 fat to protein by percent, 70-30, 75-25. All of these ratios, you're being told to eat this ratio of fat for this ratio of protein. And you know what that's based on? That's based on calories. So if you are chasing ratios, I see this all the time. Chasing the ratio, not looking at overall intake at all. And so if you're tracking and you're trying to hit your fat ratio, and you're like, oh no, I've eaten too much protein. Now I have to eat more fat so I can get to the ratio. And now all of a sudden you're adding food to add fat because you went over your protein percentage. So you're only looking at the ratios, and now all of a sudden you've eaten double the food you would have eaten in a day because you're trying to hit some magical ratio. So that brings me to another mistake, and that is focusing on macro ratios. Using macro calculators online, especially the keto calculators, because they're all using ratios, or using keto apps like My Carb Manager and all the other keto apps that are great for tracking your food. It's great to do that, but not to allow this piece of technology to give you macros based on some kind of magical keto ratios. So somebody, a few of you mentioned that last week on the Getting Started, like, oh, the big mistake I made was using these online calculators. So I always recommend for our clients and members, we do not use calculators. We ask you to track what you're already eating. So that brings me to my next piece, which is not tracking. The next mistake is not tracking at all, or not tracking correctly, or not tracking completely. So let's talk about what all these things are. Instead of using an online calculator or an app to tell you what macros to eat and then trying to hit those numbers by ratios especially, we ask you to track what you're already eating without changing anything, just so you can get a baseline of where am I, at least for a week. 2 weeks would be even better. 4 weeks would be even better, but most of you are in a rush, especially when you're joining a program like ours. You're like, okay, I want to get to your recommendations as soon as possible. So we ask at least 7 days. Give us 7 days of tracking data so we can take a look at what you're already eating. So some of the things that folks do wrong are not tracking at all for years. And this is why, another reason why we see so much in discussion boards where it's, should I do this or should I do that? Well, how are we supposed to know what you should be doing or not doing when you can't even tell us definitively where you already are? And even when I'm doing consults with people and they're doing a one-time consult with me and I ask all these questions, generally there's a clear understanding that they either don't understand what they've been trying to do. They don't know what macros they're even eating. What they think that they're aiming for their macros and what they're actually consuming are nowhere near one another. So there's not an awareness of what I'm actually eating versus what I'm striving for. Another thing I see is only looking at carbs. A lot of people, when they start tracking, they're only tracking carbs. They're not even looking at protein or fat. It's just counting carbs. And even worse than that, only tracking net carbs. So any product that wants to subtract something from carbs to make you think that it's low carb can subtract all the sugar alcohols and all these man-made fibers that they're adding to the product to make it seem like it's low carb, but it's really not. You think you're eating X number of carbs and you're actually eating 10 times more than you think you are because you're only looking at net carbs. And if you're only looking at carbs, then you're leaving the 2 other macronutrients completely out of the equation and have no idea where your protein or your fat is. So not paying attention to all of the macronutrients, not tracking everything. So along with that, tracking incorrectly. So a huge thing, it's always a learning curve when you first start tracking. And we see this with our new members. And I love it. I love it when new members come in and they're learning how to do this and they're asking questions. Shout out to Karen, Bubbles, because when she came into the Build program, dude, it was brand new for her to track macros. And she would be in there asking questions every day. And that's how I knew she was taking action. Because if you're not asking questions, I'm just going to assume you're probably not doing it. Because if you're doing it, you're going to have a question somewhere along the line. So I always tell everyone, because the ladies are always like, oh, I'm so sorry I'm asking questions. I'm like, no, do not apologize. That's what you're here for. We want to see that because it means you're taking action and you're putting in effort and you're wanting to understand. This is the biggest thing here. And this is where I see a lot of disconnect. Even if you think you're tracking accurately, a lot of the time I see people just picking something, right? Scanning a package into their nutrition tracking app, or looking it up and picking something and plugging it in and not even really looking at it. You want to track with the goal of understanding what you're putting in your body. So you look at the package, if it came out of a package. If you're scanning the barcode on the package to your nutrition tracking app, you want to look at the label and you want to look at the app and you want to make sure the numbers match. Are the macros the same on here? Now, a lot of the time, the calories are not going to be the same. The calories tend to be a little bit off in these calculators. They usually don't match. If you were to do the math yourself and you're calculating 4 calories per gram of protein times the number of grams of protein, and you're calculating it all up with all the macros, it doesn't equal the calories. And there's reasons for that. So I usually say, unless it's like way off, don't worry so much about the calories, but look at the macros. And when you scan it in, is it even matching at all? Or sometimes you scan a product. What do I see this on a lot? There's like, smoked salmon. I love smoked salmon. Almost every brand of smoked salmon I have ever bought doesn't match up. And then I have to either search a little bit harder to find the accurate entry, or I end up creating a copy and saving it with the accurate data. So just something as simple as scanning things, plugging things in, and not really looking at them to make sure that they're what they should be. And then also having the goal of understanding when you look at a label and it says something, if it is off, that you know enough that you could identify that you're looking at it going, something doesn't seem right here, because you actually understand the food. You understand what you're looking at. So you want to understand, what does a label mean? Why would this number be off? Now, particularly when it comes to the carbs, this is where they can sneak things in and they can trick you. And the number one products that trick you on the carbs these days is anything with allulose in it, because they don't have to track that. They don't have to count that. So it'll have allulose. It won't track those carbs at all. They don't even have to list it as fiber. They don't have to list it as a sugar alcohol, because it's not a sugar alcohol. But then you look at the ingredients and there's allulose in it. I guarantee you it's higher carbs than you think. None of this stuff is free. And we have to get out of the mindset of, what can I get away with? And that's why all these things are attractive at first. And this is why these are mistakes that people make, and they're not getting the results they want, because it's shortcuts. It's, what can I get away with? It's, this is only 1 net carb. Okay. Look closer. Look at all of it. Track total carbs. Look at fiber. Look at sugar alcohols. Look at ingredients. And I mentioned this last week as well, so I won't beat the dead horse. But paying attention to labels of food, and beyond just the nutrition numbers, but also looking at ingredients. So that brings me to my next mistake. And that is focusing on macros over micros. Meaning macronutrient numbers, keto approved foods, versus nutrient density, micronutrients, vitamins and minerals. What is this food doing for my body? How is this food nourishing me? Does it have a nutrient profile? Is this nutrient dense? Or is it just a keto food? If you have been relying on keto food lists, beef, butter, bacon, and eggs, you might be leaving some nutrition on the table. Even if the carnivore gurus told you you're going to get everything you need from beef. I will tell you, and I was thinking I might need to do a masterclass on this, although I think I may have done one. I have to look back. I know I did one about meal planning and meal prep. And so I think I probably covered it there. But I try to get as much variety. I am animal-based, mostly carnivore. I do have some extras. Sometimes I'll have more extras, and sometimes I have less plant matter, if you will. But so I'm not saying everybody needs to eat the rainbow, which is advice you'll hear in various holistic circles. So I'm not going to say you have to eat the entire rainbow. You have to eat a ton of veg. Not everybody does great on veg, but not everyone needs to be carnivore either. And certainly not everyone needs to be lion diet. So my personal plan, the way that I do this, is I try to get generally like 3 to 4 different kinds of animal proteins, animal foods, into my day as possible. A typical day for me is going to look like beef and or lamb, eggs, turkey and or chicken. Well, turkey or chicken, usually not both on the same day. Salmon, for sure. So I'm going to have some kind of seafood, poultry, eggs, red meat, and then occasionally some pork. So a little bit of everything in the animal kingdom. And then I'll incorporate things like sauerkraut, sometimes some fruits, but usually like pickles, sauerkraut, olives, sometimes some pumpkin seeds, dark chocolate, things of that nature. But it's a variety of meat sources as well. It's a variety of animal-based sources, not just beef every day. Ooh, avocado. Yes, Mary, I've been having avocado this week. Every once in a while, I'll throw it in for like a week. Coconut, usually some kind of coconut product all the time because I don't do dairy. So, micros over macros. How much micronutrition is in this food? Not just thinking, is it a keto product? Is it a keto approved food? And that brings me to the next mistake. Keto products. A while back, I swore off anything with keto on the label. It was like, done. I might have some supplements with keto on the label, but I don't buy keto snack products. I don't buy keto bread. I don't buy keto or low carb, anything that says keto or low carb on a product, especially not any of the bars. All of the bars that you can buy in the grocery store, whether it says keto, keto friendly, low carb, no sugar, one net carb, whatever the hell, it's all marketing BS. And they're adding crap to it most of the time. It's horrible, the stuff that they're putting in these things. So for the most part, avoid processed packaged keto labels. And that, I'm just going to leave that at that because there really has not been one that I could really recommend. Now, and I should also say, as we're talking about macros and micros, if you are living on processed meats and cheeses, the very first thing I would do is get rid of the processed meats and cheeses and focus on fresh hunks of roast, steaks, ground beef, different meat sources. If you're living on sausage and bacon and pepperoni and salami and all the cheeses, that's killing your progress right there. Swap those out for fresh, clean meats, and it will make a massive difference, not just in your fat loss, but in the way you feel on a day-to-day basis. The inflammation those things are going to cause in your body is not worth it. No, I'm sorry. I don't care who said it to you. Bacon is not a meal. You can pair it with some other things and make it a meal. But if you're sitting down to eat a pound of bacon at a time, you can do better. There are better choices out there on the spectrum. I always talk about foods on a spectrum, because what we don't want to do, and this is not on my list, but maybe it should be, but is fear foods and look at things in black and white. Keto or not keto foods. Everything exists on a spectrum. All foods can be on the higher end of the health spectrum or on the lower end of the health spectrum. Bacon is not on the high end. Sorry. Yes, Mary, I love this. Bacon is my carnivore candy. That's the way I think about it. Bacon to me is like a dessert or a treat or a snack or a side dish. It is not the main event. It is not what is nourishing my body. All right. So next up, along the same lines of the keto snack products, are all of the recipes, all of the comfort foods, all of the replacements for all of the foods that you overate when you were eating carbs. And this one came up in last week's discussion. A lot of people identified with this one. When you are constantly recreating foods to make them keto, you have not changed the habits that got you where you don't want to be. The habits that got you overweight, the habits that got you over fat, the habits that got you out of shape. And you're not changing your relationship with food. Instead of allowing this lifestyle to make you think about when you're eating, why you're eating, and what you're eating, it's all about gluttony. It's all about, ooh, what keto cheesecake can I make this week? What keto dessert? What keto side dish? What keto mashed potatoes? Whatever, whatever it is. But if you are living for the replacements, you have not changed the important things that need to change beyond just what foods are going into the meal or the recipe to make it keto. So at some point, and this is usually a thing that I see is, at some point these bridges, I call them bridge foods. I did a whole masterclass about it. These bridges can really help you get over the hump of changing a lifestyle, but they do not need to remain in your lifestyle forever. I see that holding a lot of people back. And on top of that, let's talk about the recipes. So not only do I see so much about, recreating all your comfort foods, but picking up a cookbook, following people's cookbooks, following people's recipes to the letter without considering at all, how does this fit into my macros? How does this fit into my goals? How does this fit into my lifestyle? Because there are whole cookbooks and recipe books out there that are not designed for you. They are not designed to help you get to where you're trying to go. This is why I have not done cookbooks, because when I do, y'all, because eventually it's coming. You guys have been asking me for this forever. Keto Bikini Kitchen will eventually be published. But when I do, it's not going to be, I'm sorry to tell you, here's the spoiler alert, it's not going to be X grams and of this and tablespoon and of this. It's going to be a template, because that's the way I think about my meals. I create templates, not recipes. Because if I create a recipe, if I create 50 recipes and I tell you to eat these things every day, it might wildly make you gain a whole bunch of body fat. It might make somebody else lose a whole bunch of body fat. Because the macros need to be designed, it needs to fit into your macros. So in my meal planning guide, by the way, for those in the academy who haven't poked around in the resources for a while, in the Nutrition Vault, I have my meal planning guide. I talk about tailoring your meals to your macros. So you know what your overall macros are for the day that you're trying to hit for your goals. And then you have to divide that up and say, all right, how much am I having for this meal versus that meal? If you're trying to make a recipe and you don't even think about, well, do I need to alter this recipe to make it work within my macros? Good luck. And I see some people out there with recipe books that are 1,200 calorie recipe books. Every recipe and there's no more than 1,200 calories. So when we talked about not eating enough, some of you need a lot more than that to maintain your optimal body composition, your optimal health. So if you just pick up somebody's recipes and you're barely eating enough food because everything in there is designed to be a low calorie, I'm not going to name any names, but y'all probably know who I'm talking about. It's not designed for you. So there's nothing wrong with going and finding recipes, especially when you're doing meals with the family, you're doing holiday meals, and that's the time I say lean into those bridge foods. Because if you can bring your own dessert to the keto family event, the family event that is not keto, and you're the only one eating keto, and bringing your own dessert will keep you from diving into all the other desserts, and maybe it'll also help your family eat a little bit healthier, I'm all for it. But if you're doing these things every week and you're not getting the progress you want, you got to ask yourself some questions. What's going on here? And then when you do look at recipes, consider. Most of y'all, a lot of y'all have told me, oh, I did all these recipes and there's so much dairy and there's so much fat because so many of the keto cookbooks are focused on that high fat we talked about earlier. And then there's no way you can make that work. So whenever I did ever want to, I rarely use recipe because I'm a very simple girl. I like simple things with just a couple of ingredients and just a couple of steps, preferably one step. But if I do look at recipes, then I'm going to say, oh, okay, well, there's no way I'm putting 8 cups of heavy cream in this. So how can I work this out to be better for my macros? And that's where a lot of my personal recipe templates have come from. Okay, let's see, recipes, recreating comfort foods. Finally, we get to the training. Not training. The next mistake I see is not training. Not exercising at all is the first mistake that a lot of ladies come to me having literally never done anything. They've been on keto for years. They lost 100 pounds. They now have all this hanging skin and all of this excess fat just kind of hanging on their bodies. They don't look any better. They're like, I lost 100 pounds. I still look like I looked before, but now I just have all this hanging skin. And it is because they never trained. It's also usually that they haven't been eating enough protein all this time on keto. So they lost a lot of muscle. Once again, it goes back to, that's going to be one of the last ones, but it goes back to the focusing too much on the scale and not body composition. But not training at all, especially not weight training. There's so many women out there are afraid to pick up weights. They're afraid to get bulky. I'm sorry, ladies, it is never going to happen. There's nothing you can do to get bulky unless you're taking performance enhancing drugs, anabolic steroids. It just doesn't happen. I would love for that to happen. If it happened to me, I would be much farther along in bodybuilding than I am. But they're afraid to get bulky. They're afraid to get injured. this is something my Academy ladies heard me say recently. You are not going to get hurt in the gym. 9 times out of 10, you're going to get hurt in your day-to-day life. And why? Because you fell, you twisted wrong, you picked something up wrong. Why? Because you do not have control over your muscles and over your body because you have not trained it. Training in the gym prepares you for life. It prepares you to have better motor function, better control over your limbs, better balance and coordination and stability, all of the things we need to be able to go about our day-to-day functions without injuring ourselves. 9 times out of 10, it's not the training that is going to cause problems. But there's a lot of ladies that are afraid of getting hurt. Boom, Bubbles nailed it. You're going to get hurt because you're not in the gym. Exactly that. So first problem when it comes to exercise is just not training, not doing exercise at all. The other thing I see, so that's like a sedentary lifestyle, right? And exactly, Hannah said, where is that? Popular influencers say, you don't need to exercise. Absolutely. That's another promise, another shiny promise being made. Oh, you go keto because you don't have to exercise. Yeah, let's see how that works out for you. 3 to 5 years later, you're going to be upset you did not train earlier. Becky said not training and doing keto is what gave me a pancake butt. And y'all, we're turning that around now that she's eating protein and training. I love it. Okay, so the next thing I see people doing wrong is doing too much cardio. If they're doing any exercise at all, what do they always say? I walk. I walk X miles a day. I walk X steps a day. Walking is not going to build muscle. It is not going to get you stronger. It is not going to get you better at life. And why are they walking or going to cardio classes? Well, number one, because it's easy. It doesn't take the kind of effort that learning something new, like lifting weights, learning how to do things properly requires. And it's in a class environment, so it feels more inviting than going into a gym and working out on your own. But I see a lot of this, oh, I'm active. I go do this community thing. Oh, I'm active. I walk. Oh, I play tennis. You might do these things. You might have a recreational sport. But what is going to make you better at that sport beyond the skill? Because you could play pickleball, you could play tennis, you could swim, whatever your sport of choice is, your activity of choice is. And you'll get better at it just by practicing the skill of it. But every single woman who has ever come to me and had another activity that they enjoyed doing, and they decided to focus on strength training for a period of time with me, and they went back to incorporating their other activity, they found that they were worlds better at their other activity. My mountain climbers, my long distance runners, my hikers, bikers, like so many, my CrossFitters and obstacle course racers, when they went back to doing their activity that they enjoyed because they enjoyed doing it, and they reincorporated it into their lives after trusting me and either giving it up or just pulling way back on it, when they did add it back into their lives, they got a million times better. Why? Because they had better motor function, they had better control over their bodies, they were physically stronger because their muscles were stronger, they had developed strength and endurance that they did not have just from playing their sport. So you can have active hobbies and you can walk all you want, but doing those things is not going to build muscle and build strength and core stability and balance and coordination and all of those other things. Training with weights, weight training, resistance training will make you better at all those other things. All right. And yard projects, as Bubbles mentions yard projects, like that's such a good example. For those of you who are gardeners, who do things around your house, who are homesteaders, who have farm activities you have to do, that is work for your body. How are you training so that your body will be better at doing those things? All right. The other thing I love about resistance training is that it is a place where you can go in and focus on your form, your range of motion, the mastery of the movement. As I say to my ladies in the academy, master the movements. You can practice it in a structured environment where you can be careful about the way that you're moving and strategic about the way that you're moving so that you don't injure yourself. Whereas the sports and activities and classes, you can't focus so much on those things. So you're in a group fitness class, what are they always doing? Faster, faster, let's go, time, right? And they're pushing you and amping you up, but they're not checking your form. They're not making sure that you know what you're doing. So, all right. We are over an hour, so I'm going to squeeze these last ones in. But water and electrolytes. The next mistake is not paying attention to hydration. I can't tell you how many clients I've had who've come to me who literally don't drink any water. They're drinking energy drinks and coffee all day and no water. And the other huge thing I see that has people running back to carbs saying, oh my God, I feel terrible when I go keto, so I need carbs, is that they're not consuming electrolytes. And they get crazy keto flu. They feel like garbage and then they give up because they don't realize I'm losing electrolytes, I'm losing minerals, I'm losing water because carbohydrates hydrate the cells. With every molecule of carbs that you put in your body, you get 3 molecules of water. This is another reason why people lose so much in the first week and then stop losing. Once again, they're only thinking about weight. They have no concept of body composition. All they see is the scale going down and they get excited. And then it stays the same. And now they're like, oh my gosh, I stopped losing. Well, you were not losing body fat. You were losing water. That is going to happen every time you drop carbs. And if you put the carbs back in, you're going to see the scale go back up because the water has come back. It is not weight. It is not fat. Weight and fat are not the same thing. That is the number one thing. I should have put that first, to separate weight and fat, because weight does not equal fat. There's so much more that goes into the weight on the scale. And we'll get into that in a second. But not paying attention to either, number one, not even paying attention to how much water you're consuming or lack thereof. So I always say, okay, well, how much water are you consuming? I don't know. Track it. You know, how many ounces are in your water bottle? How many times do you fill it up every day? My little pro tip is that I use a pitcher. It's an 80-ounce pitcher, and I refill that for the whole day. And then my aim is to finish that in one of these, which is 20 ounces. So that's my 100 ounces a day. And that's my standard. That's how I track. I pour from the same pitcher all day to refill these, and then I don't have to remember how many times I refilled them. So tracking your water and paying attention to your electrolytes. A lot of the time I see this in discussion boards as well. Oh, my electrolytes are good. What does that even mean? You know, if you ask them, well, what are your electrolytes? What are you doing for electrolytes? They're like, oh, I take a packet of LMNT or whatever electrolyte. Well, that might not be enough. You might need a lot more than that. I think just because they're taking a packet of something, their electrolytes are good, whatever that means. So I will generally ask, pay attention to your symptoms, because every person is individual here. There is not and I've seen protocols out there where they tell you exactly how many milligrams of each electrolyte you should be consuming every day on keto. And everybody's the same. They all should be within these ranges. It's just not true. Some people do better with lower potassium, higher sodium. Some people do better with more of a 1-to-1 or a 2-to-1 or a 4-to-1 ratio of sodium to potassium. And then how much electrolytes you're consuming versus how much water is going to make a difference too. If you're sweating more and you're drinking more water, you need to put in more electrolytes with that water. You keep jacking up the water and not adding more electrolytes, and now you're flushing more of the electrolytes out. So I do have a whole masterclass on hydration, so you can check that out for more information there. But it's one of those things we have to look at and assess. How am I feeling? What are my symptoms? And then what are the numbers? And then what do I need to adjust? Just like macros, what results am I getting? How am I feeling? Biofeedback, biometrics, and then what do I need to change? And if we're not tracking, we're not going to know what to change. All right, so finally, neglecting sleep, stress management, and self-care. This is a major problem, especially for women. They want an exercise program. They want a diet plan. They want macros. They want to macro harder. They want to train harder. They want to do everything harder. And yet they're not sleeping, and they're not doing anything to improve their sleep. They are stressed out to the max all the time and not incorporating any kind of stress management techniques. They are not doing anything to take care of themselves. They're putting and prioritizing everybody else above themselves. And they literally get to the end of the day, they're completely spent, completely exhausted, and they never did a damn thing for themselves all day. So if that is you, you could be doing everything right with your nutrition. You could be doing everything perfect with your training. You could be drinking all the water and getting all the steps. And your body is going to stop losing body fat. It is going to stop recovering. It is not going to build muscle. It is not going to respond because you're stressing it out. So do not neglect your sleep, stress, and self-care. And then I've beat this dead horse already, and I'll beat it one more time. And I'll say it specifically this time. Using the scale as the only measure of progress is one of the biggest mistakes I see. And this is what will send you into, I suppose, another mistake, following all the trends. The sardine diet, OMAD, alternate day fasting, the stupid freaking sugar diet now. Any new magic pill somebody's promising, you're going to chase that if it promises weight loss. And I guarantee you, if you are losing weight quickly, it is not fat. It's not just fat. If you're losing weight quickly, you are losing water, and you will ultimately be losing muscle. If you're doing extreme dieting measures for rapid weight loss, it is not sustainable, and it is not how you get the body that you want. We want to protect and preserve muscle. We want to stay hydrated. We don't want to be dehydrating ourselves just to chase an extra pound down on the scale, because it's not body fat that we're losing when we see that water weight go down. So start looking at much more than the scale. Understand body composition metrics, your clothing, photos, measurements, all of the non-scale victories, all of the other health markers, all of the things that tell you I am optimizing. Your performance in the gym, like we were talking about at the beginning with Karen. How is my performance in the gym? Am I able to improve? What about all those other activities we talked about in your day? Are you better at going up the stairs? Are you able to take in more groceries when you come home from the grocery store because you're stronger? Look at all the other ways. How's your skin? How's your mood? How's your energy? How are your relationships? Look at how it's impacting all the other areas of your life beneficially, beyond just what the damn number is looking back at you on the scale. And that doesn't mean to avoid the scale, but just use it as one metric. Don't put everything into weight. I have a masterclass on that too. If you struggle with the weight, there's a masterclass called End Your Scale Obsession. Check that one out. All right, ladies, I think this concludes the mistakes, common mistakes I see on keto that are killing your results. I hope you can make some changes to any of these areas, any of these mistakes you may still find yourself doing, or share this with a friend who needs to hear it. I love y'all. 2 days from now, Coach Bronson and I are heading out to the low carb cruise. So next week, I will likely need to either cancel the masterclass or change it to a different time and day. We're going to do the same thing with our coffee chat. We're going to have to find probably a different time on Sunday. So stay tuned there. We'll post the details on YouTube and Facebook and probably Instagram as well. I'll see y'all on the interwebs. Bye for now.